Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about this interesting criticism slash nitpick about the movie Blue Beetle. Do not worry, this will not involve any spoilers. So if you haven't seen Blue Beetle already, you could still watch this. And basically, this weird criticism I heard was that there was this discussion about there are certain inside jokes that are in the movie that are not translated, because obviously the movie has subtitles for any time they're speaking Spanish in the movie, so you're kind of included in some of it. But there's some things which I guess I noticed maybe once or twice, but I didn't think much of it. I was like, oh, okay, and just kind of moved on. It wasn't that I never got too hung up on it, but apparently it happens more than like once or twice or something like that, based on what this person was saying. And so their issue was that they felt like, yeah, the movie's meant to be like, oh, everyone can enjoy it, but it's like if you do stuff like that, you ostracize the audience, making them feel like the movie's not meant for them to. Which I think that's kind of a whole diatribe in itself of like, that's kind of a weird thing to kind of pull into that. It's just like, right, this revolves around a Mexican-American character who has Mexican roots, and it's a very like cultural movie, so it's like, of course, they're going to be sprinkled in cultural things that not everyone's going to resonate with. There's still 90% of the movie that, like, regardless of what culture you're from, you can still resonate with. Like, you know, I've never had the exact experiences that the Reyes family has. I'm not from the same culture, but there's still so many elements, the family unit as a whole, that I was like, I still heavily resonated with, you know, just on the family element, but even on a personal level with Jaime, I recognize, like, I resonated a lot with that as well. But like I said, getting so caught up in like, apparently like these like few times throughout the movie where it's like, yeah, something was said in Spanish without being translated because apparently they're like inside jokes, which that it's what I was kind of getting so hung up on, because I was like, well, first and foremost, it's like there's just going to be cultural jokes that do not translate. You know, it's that would kind of be my that's kind of like my biggest rebuttal to that would be like, I guess in their mind it's like, well, they don't include it. It's like, but it's also like, right, what the culture that this is supposed to be representing, of course you're going to have inside jokes. Like every culture has things that just do not translate well into another. Like even if you directly translate it into English, like who's to say it would make sense? And like, oh, they'll say this thing and it's like, wait, why is that funny? And so on, we have to be, well, it has this cultural relevance that like, oh my god, like every Mexican family's kind of experienced this type of thing. I mean, I'm sure every culture has that, where it's like, oh, there's certain things like in a movie that's talking about black culture, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's funny. And someone's like, why is that? It's like, well, if you grew up in a household like this, it makes sense. But outside, you know, I mean, and like I'd even make that argument, you know, with my experience with anime and manga, that there are inside jokes that don't translate well when you like translate them from Japanese to English, because there's some things that don't, like I said, if you like directly translate them, it's like a, why is that funny? It's like, well, it's funny on a cultural level because like it's kind of this inside joke and cultural reference that you won't get, which is also my thing too. Like, it's no, like, this is a superhero movie we're talking about, so I'm like, would you have the same criticism? Like, that's on a language barrier thing, that you're like, oh, you're ostracizing people. But what about this thing of like, well, there's little references here and there that unless you have like above average comic book knowledge, you wouldn't know. Like, would you have the same criticism on that part? Like, oh my god, they sprinkled in all these references. It's the same thing. They made sure in the movie that all the relevant stuff that you as an audience member needed to know is there. Hey, maybe I'm speaking out of pocket, maybe I'm completely wrong, and even in those inside jokes there's relevancy, but to me it's just like, right, it's supposed to be a cultural thing, and it's just inside jokes with this family that might also, like I said, be a cultural thing in itself. But it just, to me, that was just such a weird nitpick. The person I'm referencing, they were fine with the movie, which that's why I'm like, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm not holding that against them, like, it, you know, but it's just like that particular nitpick. I was like, that's such a weird thing to nitpick about, because to me, I'm like, I've seen plenty of movies and TV shows that do that, where like characters will have full-blown conversations and like, or lines of dialogue that are not translated or subtitled for you not to know, and then another character might like be like vaguely be like, oh, this is basically what that person said. Like, that's why I'm like, okay, like I said, I didn't think much of it, but when I heard this person say that, I was like, that's such a, because like the other person was here who kind of agreed with him too. I'm like, that's such a weird thing to nitpick about. That would just, that to me, and it's such a common enough place thing that I'm like, why would you get so caught up in that? That's just so weird. That's why I'm also not specifying where I heard this from, because I'm not trying to draw attention of like, oh, these people are terrible people for thinking that. It's just, to me, I thought it was so interesting because it's such a weird nitpick that I just want to make a video kind of talking about it a little bit. Like I said, I'm not trying to demonize anyone, but I just thought that was just, that's so weird to nitpick that, because it's a very, very specific nitpick. Then, I mean, I'm not saying like no one's ever had, I mean, I've just never heard that. And to be fair, I haven't heard and watched every review about Blue Beetle, but that was just such a weird thing that I hadn't heard anyone mention up until that point in time, so I just thought it was so interesting. I mean, like I said, maybe I've referenced that other movies and TV shows have done it, and maybe that same nitpick is there in other movies and TV shows, but like I said, I just never really heard that until now. So, like I said, it was just something I thought was kind of an interesting topic of discussion. Maybe you'll agree that it's interesting, maybe you will disagree that it's interesting, but I thought it was interesting and I just wanted to talk about it. I mean, in the comments down below, I love to get to know your thoughts. I've kind of put my perspective thinking it's a weird nitpick, but what do you think? Do you think it's weird to kind of nitpick over this situation? Am I weird for focusing on this nitpick too much? I'd love to actually get to know your thoughts, because I could be just a weirdo out thinking that's weird, but I'd love to know. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.